with President Trump's new message to Iran, with the commander-in-chief ordering a powerful and deadly attack against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen over the weekend. Multiple rebels dead after the strikes hit the intended targets in Yemen's capital city on Saturday. With President Trump writing on Truth Social, the Houthis have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against America.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the Houthis were designated a foreign terrorist organization by the State Department not too long ago. And so now they're treated differently than they were before.
American ships, aircraft, and drones. Your attacks must stop starting today. And if they don't, hell will rain down upon you like nothing you have ever seen before, writes the president. Trump also sending a direct message to Iran, warning the Iranians not to support terrorist proxies. The president following up after breaking news on this program last week that he sent a letter to the supreme leader of Iran asking to open up talks regarding Iran's nuclear ambitions.
I've written him a letter saying, I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them.
You wrote a letter to the Khomeini?
Yes.
The leader? When did you send the letter?
Yesterday.
And you said you better negotiate, or we want you to negotiate?
I didn't say you better. I said, I hope you're going to negotiate, because it's going to be a lot better for Iran. And I think they want to get that letter. The other alternative is we have to do something, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, that would not be good.
Those comments sparking a response to the interview from Iran last weekend, with the supreme leader saying Iran would not be bullied, writing, the insistence of some bullying governments on negotiations is not aimed at resolving issues, but rather at asserting dominance and imposing their demands. The Islamic Republic of Iran will certainly not accept their demands, writes the Ayatollah Khomeini. Joining me now with more on the Yemeni attack, Iran, and the president's agenda is the nation's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Mr. Secretary, great to see you this morning. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us how it all went down on Saturday?
Well, it all went down because an era of peace through strength is back. Just like in his first term, President Trump had to deal with the weakness of President Obama and get rid of ISIS, and he did it more quickly than anybody else. We're sitting on 4 years of deferred maintenance from Joe Biden, where in particular, when you talk about the Houthis, they were allowed for over 100 times to shoot at U.S. ships.
Yeah, real quick. So there was, let's see if I can find it without anything crazy happening on X over here. U.S. Central Command. These are overhead views, overhead images and video of some of the attacks. And then, of course, they were launching jets off an aircraft carrier out there to conduct these airstrikes. Ooh, that is loud. Wow. Wow. Yeah, there was they did some
ships to shoot at commercial shipping.
Some damage.
4 months ago when we sent a ship.
The problem is they've been the big problem is they've been shooting at commercial ships, commercial freighters that were just in the area operating that didn't even necessarily have anything to do with combat or navies, and they were just transporting goods and goods through the area. And some of them were, I mean, there's a bunch of different ships. They tried to say that some of these ships were targeted because they had affiliations with Israel and things like that. What's going on, man? And they were trying to say that the reason they targeted some of these ships was because they had ties to Israel. And obviously the Houthis have been targeting Israel, you know, in any way that they could based on what they had available. And there's just a lot of animosity. I mean, obviously the whole ongoing conflict over there with Gaza and the West Bank and things that are happening around the Golan Heights, everything like that. So.
Ship through. It was shot at 17 times. Ships haven't been able to go through for over a year without being shot at. Freedom of navigation is basic. It's a core national interest. And President Trump has said, we will restore that and we will be unrelenting. I want to be very clear. This campaign is about freedom of navigation and restoring deterrence. The minute the Houthi...
Yeah, because you see right here in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, there's a lot of ships that go through there transporting goods for various countries, bunch of different nations. And every time there's a ship within that area, they get targeted by the Houthis, in some way, shape, or form, either through piracy or through drones or through rockets or missiles and things like that. And like freedom of navigation, like he's talking about, is just freedom for people to navigate those waters without being targeted.
Houthis say, we'll stop shooting at your ships, we'll stop shooting at your drones. This campaign will end. But until then, it will be unrelenting. We got the reports last night, Maria. The Houthi capital felt like an earthquake.
Looks like, according to this, it says that there's been over 180 attacks since October 17th of 2023. So that's 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years, been 180 attacks.
Earthquake. Dozens and dozens of precision heavy munitions dropping precisely on the targets that we wanted to hit, sending a very clear message. And the message is clear to Iran as well. And the president said it in his...
Okay, so these are the current assets in the Middle East. Is the USS Harry Truman, the USS The Sullivans, USS Stout, USS Jason Dunham, and the USS Gettysburg are all out there right now in support of this mission.
Truth. Your support of the Houthis needs to end immediately. We will hold you accountable as the sponsor of this proxy. And I echo his statement. We will not be nice about it. This is not the Biden administration. The message is clear. We will come after the Houthis until they stop shooting at our ships, and the Iranians better stay out of it.
And there's so many implications to this. I remember last year when this was happening, basically every day or every other day that our ships would...
Yeah, that's one thing. I think that they're probably... they're not used to dealing with the current administration just yet, I don't think, maybe, because they're approaching it in a different way than they probably would have approached it in like 2016, 17, 18, 19. The previous administration before this was approaching it in a different manner, and they probably got used to how that administration did business,
would get harassed by these rebels. And what ended up happening from an economic perspective as well, many commercial ships were afraid to even go into that route in the Red Sea. They were going around the Horn, and it was costing much more money, sending oil prices higher because it was much more expensive for the longer travel. So it's not just a national security issue, but an economic one as well.
100%. And the president understands that. Global shipping, global commerce, when it's threatened by effectively pirates and piracy, and you have to divert and go an extra 2 weeks costing millions and then eventually billions of dollars, you're being held hostage by a terrorist organization. Remember, the Biden administration took off the foreign terrorist organization designation of the Houthis.
That's right.
President Trump restored it. We're squeezing them economically. We are
that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about when they redesignated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization, so that way they have more options for what they can do to stop them and prevent them from targeting these commercial vessels as they go through the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. And it kind of allows the U.S. military to be more involved in that prevention and those preventative measures as a result of them being designated a foreign terrorist organization. Now, the big problem with Yemen is, based on what a lot of people I know that have been involved over there, is that Yemen has been torn apart from a civil war, and like the country is in shambles. Like, people don't realize how bad things are there. Like, people are using car batteries to power things and stuff like that. And there's the electric grid is totally shot to crap everywhere. Like, there's a lot of real serious economic problems there. It's like on the verge of complete collapse, and the Houthis are a very large organization over there, and they pretty much are, it's hard for the other side to kind of compete with them because the other side is kind of like independent and self-funded to a certain degree, whereas the Houthis are being funded by Iran. So currently they have a little bit more financial backing than the people that are opposing them within the country. It's pretty bad.
By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. This will continue until you say, we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets. We don't want a long, limited war in the Middle East. We don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war. This is about stopping the shooting at assets in that critical waterway to reopen freedom of navigation, which is a core national interest of the United States. And Iran has been enabling the Houthis for far too long. They better back off.
And enabling the Houthis, but also Hamas and Hezbollah. Secretary, assess the capability and the capacity today of these Iranian proxies. I'm talking about Hezbollah having become weakened in the last several months. Hamas weakened as a result of the Israeli strikes. What can you tell us about the capacity of these Iranian proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and now the Houthis? What is their state today?
Well, Maria, Iran is in a very weakened state. When you mentioned it,
more than it was
Hezbollah,
before,
you mentioned it, Hamas. You look at what happened in Syria with the collapse of that regime, which was a client state of Iran, and ultimately, a lot of their insurgent groups in Iraq have pulled back as well. But it doesn't mean they still don't have the desire. Their air defenses are weakened. And that's why they're in a position where they're supporting groups like the Houthis, because they, in some ways, have to move to other options to try to agitate and instigate in the region.
The fact is that the Iranian government, not the people, but the government, big difference, benefit from there being kind of like chaotic situations through the Middle East because they don't want necessarily stability, because if there's stable societies and there's prosperous societies, then people are in a good spot and they're harder to bargain with. And so they try to keep things kind of destabilized as much as possible.
This is a critical moment for them. The president said it on your program. He said it very clearly.
What's up? Welcome in.
They will not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. We hope they do so, that we give it up peaceably through negotiations. The president has laid out the trajectory for that because the alternative doesn't look good for anybody.
I feel like we've been hearing that Iran is close to having a nuclear weapon. We're a month away, 2 months away. We've been hearing this for years. Realistically speaking, Secretary, how close is Iran from developing a nuclear weapon in your view?
Well, that's something that's classified, something we guard very closely, we watch very closely, and that's why the president has such urgency on this, why he's leading on this. Nobody wants a military option. That's been
a topic of discussion for decades. Like a nuclearized Iran is something that they've talked about constantly. And there used to be like ambassadors to the United Nations, I think, that were visiting these nuclear facilities in Iran to like make sure that they weren't doing things like enriching uranium past a certain amount and stuff like that. And I don't know how much that's been still going on. It feels like that's been scaled back significantly. So I don't know if there's anything like that even happening now. It used to be happening in like the 90s and the early 2000s, but a lot's changed since then, obviously.
He is through maximum pressure, just as he did in his first administration. Maximum pressure bankrupt the Iranians. Well, under Joe Biden, what happened? They took off that maximum pressure.
What's up?
And groups like the Houthis were awash in cash. Then they got arrogant, started shooting at our ships. We look weak. Not anymore.
So aren't the Houthis backed by Iran? Why aren't we out there absolutely bombing them with B-52 or B-2s? Yeah, we are, conducting strikes on them.
Under President Trump, that will stop.
We just did recently.
Shooting at our ships will stop. Iran must get that clear message and negotiate the end of their pursuit for nuclear weapons because, as I mentioned, President Trump has said clearly they will not get a bomb.
And I know that the Department of Defense sent a letter to the Chairman Rogers recently about this 8% budget relook that you have called for, Secretary. And I want to get your take on that because President Trump was very clear with me last week. He is not cutting defense spending. Here's the president with me last week right here.
Yeah, if the Houthis did actually hit a U.S. ship, then it would get even more aggressive I know they've tried to. They haven't actually hit a U.S. ship, but they've definitely tried to. I think that this most recent, like over the past 24 hours, they launched a significant drone attack, and apparently they successfully defended against it. Let me see. I know I saw something about it. See if I can find it. Hey, what's going on, Fox? How's it going? Welcome in. All right, U.S. CENTCOM. I don't know if they put any press releases out recently about it. I don't think they did. No, because it's the 16th of March. I only see... Oh, wait, here it is. Yeah, that just says that there's an ongoing operation. I think somebody said... Somebody said something about the Houthis. Let's see if I can find... Yeah, so... Apparently, there was a Houthi spokesperson, Yahya Siri, that said that they launched 18 ballistic and cruise missiles along with drones at the USS Harry Truman and other military vessels in response to the strikes in Yemen. And I believe they were all shot down. What's going on? Yeah, senior defense official says U.S. warships have intercepted about a dozen Houthi drones targeting the Truman strike group since last night's airstrikes. The drones were taken down well before posing a serious threat, according to Fox. So, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there was something else about it.
بيان صادر عن القوات المسلحة اليمنية بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال تعالى فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله.
I always find these videos are very interesting. Like the way it's just like there's a big cultural difference. Just in a lot, there's so many cultural differences across the planet in all these different areas. And it is very interesting to see how different people approach different situations. Fox 64, what's up, man? Appreciate that. The swarm that went into Israel, I have not yet talked about that. Did we receive confirmation if the weapon used in Serbia was a lard? I did not. Houthis love Twitter. Yeah, you see a lot of posts on Twitter from all different organizations. I mean, the Taliban has a Twitter. So, Corey, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I figured it was interesting, and it's a topic of discussion that a lot of people are interested in. So, figure why not talk about it a little bit, you know? Let's see. Yeah, try to find a little bit of balance. Go back and forth between games in this. But anyway.
صدق الله العظيم شن العدو الأمريكي عدوانا سافرا على بلدنا خلال الساعات الماضية بأكثر من 47 غارة جوية استهدفت مناطق عدة في محافظات صنعاء وصعدة والبيضاء وحجة وضمار ومارب والجوف وارتكب العدو الأمريكي عددا من المجازر حيث أدى هذا العدوان إلى استشهاد وجرح العشرات في حصيلة غير نهائية وردا على هذا العدوان نفذت القوات المسلحة بعون الله تعالى عملية عسكرية نوعية
This dude he's screaming. He's like yelling.
هدفت من خلالها حاملة الطائرات الأمريكية USS هاري ترومان والقطع الحربية التابعة لها شمالي البحر الأحمر وذلك ب18 صاروخا باليستيا ومجنحا وطائرة مسيرة في عملية مشتركة نفذتها القوة الصاروخية وكذلك سلاح الجو المسير والقوات البحرية. إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية لن تتردد في استهداف كافة القطع الحربية الأمريكية في البحرين الأحمر والعربي ردا على العدوان على بلدنا وأنها بعون الله تعالى مستمرة في فرض الحصار البحري.
One thing you notice about some of these nations is that they kind of intermingle religion and government a lot, whereas you don't see that as often in the United States just because we have that big separation between church and state. And so that's something that we don't do as frequently, or we avoid most of the time. But let's see. You think there's likely going to be a full-blown war between the U.S. and another country to take place in 2025? I hope not. I think that the goal is to deter that from happening, you know. Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of bots on Twitter. It's pretty wild. You get a lot of DMs from them, yeah. See, Cheddar says his eyes say, I don't believe myself any of this stuff I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know. Bro's pretty locked in. He's barely, he hasn't really moved. He's just reading the teleprompter probably. He's just very locked in on the teleprompter.
على العدو الإسرائيلي وفرض الحظر على سفنه في منطقة العمليات المعلن عنها حتى إدخال المساعدات والاحتياجات الأساسية إلى قطاع غزة. إن هذا العدوان الأمريكي لن يزيد اليمن العزيز وشعبه الصامد المؤمن المجاهد إلا ثباتا وإيمانا وصمودا. والله حسبنا ونعم الوكيل. نعم المولى.
He almost is like, he's almost singing, like kind of.
ونعم النصير. عاش اليمن حرا عزيزا مستقلا. والنصر لليمن ولكل أحرار الأمة. صنعاء 16 من رمضان 1446 للهجرة، الموافق ل16 من مارس 2025، صادر عن القوات المسلحة اليمنية.
Interesting. So let's look up. Let's see what the conflict in Yemen. Let's see if there's any good summary. Yeah. So that guy that was just speaking, he's a spokesman for the Houthis. So fighting, let's see, it says here that fighting between Houthi rebels and the Saudi coalition that backs Yemeni's internationally recognized government has largely subsided, but Houthis have repeatedly attacked ships transiting the Red Sea in response to Israel's war on Hamas. Dialogue between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia, along with Iranian-Saudi normalization, has provided hope for a negotiated solution. However, talks have yielded little progress and have been punctuated by violence. The Southern Transitional Council has also renewed calls for an independent southern Yemeni state, complicating peace prospects, and al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula attacks have surged. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis has not improved. 21.6 million people need aid, including 11 million children, and more than 4.5 million are displaced. Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, there's a massive humanitarian crisis that's going on in Yemen that people don't really know a whole lot about, because not a lot of people know about what's been happening during the Yemeni civil war. Most people know about who the Houthis are, right? Because that's pretty commonly talked about in the news and in the 24-hour news cycle, and just everything going on with the Houthis this, Houthis that, but they don't really talk about what's been going on in Yemen. And that's a pretty important thing to understand before you can really understand what's going on with the Houthis, is understanding what's going on with the civil war in Yemen. And let's see, I think this puts it down pretty well. So the Yemeni civil war began in 2014 when Houthi insurgents and Shia rebels with links to Iran and a history of rising up against the Sunni government took control of Yemen's capital and largest city, Sana'a, demanding lower fuel prices and a new government. Let's see. Following failed negotiations, the rebels seized the presidential palace in January 2015, leading President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi and his government to resign. Beginning in March 2015, a coalition of Gulf states led by Saudi Arabia launched a campaign of economic isolation and airstrikes against the Houthi insurgents. So Saudi Arabia is not a fan of the Houthis, obviously, because they've been like, they launched a campaign against them of economic isolation. What's going on? Let's see. One of the few problems I have with their outlets, the military, are too stone-faced. The rate AI is running. If they drop a deep fake AI, no one would know the difference. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. There's a lot of deep fakes out there. All right, so we'll keep going here. In February 2015, after escaping from Sana'a, Hadi rescinded his resignation, complicating the UN-supported Transitional Council formed to govern from the southern port city of Aden. However, a Houthi advance force forced Hadi to flee, at least for the time being, for exile in Saudi Arabia. While he attempted to return to Aden later that year, he ultimately ruled as president in exile. Let's see. The intervention of regional powers in Yemen's conflict include Iran and the Gulf states led by Saudi Arabia also drew the country into a regional proxy struggle along the broader Sunni-Shia divide. In June of 2015, Saudi Arabia implemented a naval blockade to prevent Iran from supplying the Houthis. In response, Iran dispatched a naval convoy, raising the risk of military escalation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. See, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that Saudi Arabia and Iran were kind of like at odds at all over this whole thing, but it seems like that's kind of like a big point of contention here. The militarization of Yemen's waters also drew the attention of the U.S. Navy, like they have currently, which has continued to seize Yemen-bound Iranian weapons. Yeah, that's been a constant thing because, Yemen-bound Iranian, because the Yemen or Iran's been trying to ship weapons into Yemen constantly, which I guess it's probably because, like, if we look at Google Maps here, let's look at where everything is. All right, so we were looking over there before, but we're looking over here now. All right, so Yemen is right here. It's just south of Saudi Arabia. So connected by land, you've got Oman, you've got Yemen, and then you've got Saudi Arabia right north of it. What's going on? So we're just talking about the Yemeni civil war right now because it's a very complicated thing, and a lot of people don't know a lot about the situation there, including myself. There's a lot of information I don't know, and it's extremely complicated, like everything else that's going on Earth. It's not a simple, oh, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, this is that. It's nothing's cut and dry when it's in reference to conflicts and stuff like that, especially in the Middle East. There's so much going on, so many different players. So if you look up here, Iran is located right here, right? So Iran has coastline right here next to the Persian Gulf, and obviously Iran's got a lot of navy located in here, but they've been transporting weapons down here into the Gulf of Oman, around the outside of Oman, and dropping their weapons off in Yemen. And Saudi Arabia has been kind of interdicting them and preventing them from doing that, as well as the U.S. Navy and others. What's up? What's going on? So, Iran's been trying to constantly transport weapons into Yemen, probably through any of these port cities that are close to Sana'a. It sounded like Aden down here in the south was where the exiled leader was. But let's see. Let's keep going here. See, the blockade has been at the center of humanitarian crisis throughout the conflict. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have also led an unrelenting air campaign, with their coalition striking out over 25,000 airstrikes. Okay, so Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been doing airstrikes as well. What's going on? Let's see. These strikes have caused over 19,000 civilian casualties from 2021 to 2022. The Houthis responded with a spat of drone attacks on Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Wow. So they don't really have a lot of friends in the region. It seems to me, especially since they're co-located right just south of Saudi Arabia, that the Houthis are kind of, at least by the way that this is sounding, the antagonists in this whole thing, because Saudi Arabia is pretty close with the United States, and the U.S. Navy's been working to kind of interdict the Houthis as well as Saudi Arabia. And according to this global conflict tracker, it's talking about that there's been 25,000 airstrikes conducted by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. It's quite a few airstrikes. So it's not just the United States. It's just that this doesn't really get covered much because the United States is always like the center of attention. People always want to talk about, what's going on in the United States. And there's all kinds of stuff going on there. But let's see. On the battleground, the Houthis made fast progress at the start of the war, moving eastward to Marib and pushing south to Aden in early 2015. Where's Marib? Let's see. Where's Marib, bro? You gonna load? Marib. Where's Marib? Is there a large city over here called Marib? Let's see. Marib, Yemen. Okay, so this is Marib. I guess they pushed east to Marib and south to Aden, which is a small little tiny thing, but Aden International Airport, University of Science and Technology. See, there's so much stuff there, man. Like there could be so much prosperity. I always think of this when I'm looking at this stuff, man. There could be so much prosperity. Yeah, this is Yemen. There could be so much prosperity in the Middle East if there was no conflict. And you'd think that people would want prosperity for their people, but unfortunately, these extremist organizations always kind of take advantage of division and ethnic differences to drive their own interests and enrich themselves and all this other stuff. And there's just a lot of crap going on. Because look at this, man. This is Aden right here. It's a port city. It's probably a beautiful port city. They got a University of Science there. They've got all kinds of University of Engineering. They've got an international airport. There's so much that you could do with this, to make a prosperous nation, just with some of these coast areas, Anyway, let's keep going here. See, UN effort to broker peace talks between the allied Houthi rebels and the internationally recognized Yemeni government stalled in the summer of 2016. In the south and east of the country, a growing al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula threatened the government's control though its influence has since waned. Okay. All right. In July 2016, the Houthis and the government of former President Saleh, ousted in 2011 after nearly 30 years in power, announced the formation of a political council to govern Sana'a and much of northern Yemen. However, in December 2017, Saleh broke with the Houthis and called for his followers to take up arms against them. Saleh lost his life, and the forces were defeated within 2 days. Meanwhile, Hadi and the international recognized governments faced their own challenge. The Southern Transitional Council, established in 2017, the STC grew out of the Southern separatist movement that predates the Civil War and controls areas in the southwest around and including Aden. The 2019 Saudi brokered deal incorporated the Southern Transitional Council into the internationally recognized governments, but the faction could still present challenges. In 2018, coalition forces made an offensive push on the coast northward to the strategic city of Hodeidah, the main seaport for northern Yemen. Where's Hodeidah? So it says northern Yemen, so it must be up here, right? Where's Hodeidah? Is that Oman? Yeah, that's Oman, so it's got to be in here. Let's see. I don't know. I don't see a Hodeidah. Let's type it in. Hodeidah. Oh, okay. It's way over here. Okay. Yeah, Hodeidah's got an international airport too. Interesting. They got a nice port. Al-Khatib Coast. There's probably some awesome areas you could take photography and stuff. There's so much history here too, probably, that's just been covered up by all this war and stuff, man. It's unfortunate. Let's see. Okay. In 2020, the UAE officially withdrew from Yemen, but it maintains extensive influence throughout the country. Yeah, because it's closely located. So if you look over here, so this is all Yemen, right? And then the UAE is right here. This is all the UAE. I think, yeah, Abu Dhabi. Yeah, Abu Dhabi's right here. Not sure where Dubai is. Oh, there's Dubai. Yeah. Dubai. Oh, there's all those palms that they made the islands for people to live on. Those are pretty cool, right? People that live there filthy, disgusting rich because they just have so much cash that they can afford to live in these houses and stuff. Imagine you just like live in a mansion with a pool right here on the palm, one of the palms. Like, that'd be wild. I can't even imagine. Frond K, palm fronds. Jesus, dude. That's so crazy. And all this looks like government buildings or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole nother. What is this? The heart of Dubai, the world Dubai. What is this? There's like a resort there? South of Norway, Romania, Turkey, Iraq, Qatar, Emirates, Jordan, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman. They have... Wait, is there a mosque out there? No. I don't know. Maybe these are old. There's a government office there. Azerbaijan. They got all these little islands here are all supposed to represent a country based on the way it looks. This is super built up. What is that? Looks like they were trying to build place. Those are swimming pools. Interesting. I wonder what that was going to be. They got a lot of stuff they're trying to develop out there in Dubai. There's a lot of money there, oil money, other things. I think they have a strong relationship with Saudi Arabia as well. They tried to shape them in the form of Earth. You can kind of see the Americas. Oh yeah, interesting. That's pretty wild. Anyway, let's go back to this right here. So in 2021, February, Houthi rebels launched an offensive to seize Marib, the last stronghold of Yemen's internationally recognized government. And in early March, Houthi rebels conducted missile airstrikes in Saudi Arabia, including targeting oil tankers and facilities in international airports. The Saudi-led coalition responded to the increase in attacks with airstrikes targeting Sana'a. The offensive was the deadliest clash since 2018. Hundreds of fighters lost their lives in complicating the peace process. Man, this is pretty heavy right here. Meanwhile, the conflict has taken a heavy toll on Yemeni civilians, making Yemen the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The UN estimates that 60% of the estimated 377,000 deaths in Yemen between 2015 and the beginning of 2022 were the result of indirect causes like food insecurity and lack of accessible health services. 2/3 of the population, or 21.6 million Yemenis, remain in dire need of assistance. 5 million are at risk of famine, and a cholera outbreak has affected over 1 million people. All sides of the conflict are reported to have violated human rights and international humanitarian law. Yeah, so that's not good. That's not good at all. There's yeah. I don't know how you fix this. Like I don't know how you fix what's going on there, because it's just so complicated, and the internationally recognized government of Yemen is pretty much almost non-existent, at least by the way it sounds, you know. And like the Houthis pretty much have strong-armed everything, because the Houthis have been continuously receiving backing from Iran in the region. Meanwhile, it doesn't seem like Saudi Arabia or Dubai have been financially backing the internationally recognized government as much. I think they're still backing them. They're still conducting, or they have been conducting airstrikes. I don't know if there still are or not. I haven't seen anything about it. But it's just, it's crazy. It's wild, man. So let's see what else the president had to say here about.
You said you wanted to do the Golden Dome. You've got a lot of ideas for America. But then earlier you said you wanted to cut $1 trillion in defense spending, right?
I didn't say I was.
You did not. So I was like, which is it? Are you cutting defense spending, or are you building us up?
I never said defense spending.
Okay, because I think you were talking about denuclearization.
Correct.
And that's where the cutting of the spending came in.
I never said cut. No, it's not in these days. I'd love to cut defense spending, but not now. Because you have China, you have Russia, you have a lot of problems out there.
Also, Secretary, the letter that was sent to Chairman Rogers was talking about the fiscal year 26 budget request, perhaps incorporating that 8% decline there. If you're looking at an increase in defense spending, Secretary, how do you allocate that? Where are the needs in our military? I know we don't have enough ships, and the Navy in China is actually dominating us when it comes to the number of ships. But how do you allocate that increase in defense spending?
Ships, shipbuildings, long-range munitions, hypersonics, long-range drones, Golden Dome, Southern Border. The president has laid out very clearly his agenda to rebuild the U.S. military. He did it in his first term. He's going to do it again. This 8% has been highly mischaracterized, Maria. It's not a cut. It's a reallocation away from Biden priorities toward Green New Deal stuff, toward President Trump priorities. So we have revived the warrior ethos inside the military. We're reestablishing deterrence. And per the president's direction, we're going to rebuild the military. You're going to see a historic investment in the weapons and modernization required to stand up to our enemies. President Trump is committed to that. He's asked me to be a part of it. We're going to work with Capitol Hill to do it. But we're going to be fiscally responsible with
Big Chick Din Din, what's up, man?
Taxpayer dollars, Maria. We're going to pass an audit. We're going to work with DOJ. We're going to find there's plenty of waste, fraud, and abuse in the DOD, and we're going to find it. At the same time, we're going to reinvest overwhelmingly.
Do I think that China is going to invade the Panama Canal since BlackRock bought it? I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but there's been discussions about possibly establishing some sort of military plan. What's going on? Welcome in. There's been some sort of discussion for establishing a military plan for the canal down there in Panama. I don't know what that looks like or who's bringing that up, but I heard that somebody was tasked with preparing some sort of a plan for the Panama Canal should the military need to go down there. But I don't know what that looks like or what organization is planning it or if it's even something that's going to guaranteed happen.